Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are going to be talking about a topic that has annoyed me greatly ever since the first time I played Kingdom Come Deliverance all those years ago. I had mostly forgotten it until finishing the second game for the second time just a few days ago, and I was reminded by how annoying this issue is. And simply put, it is that, despite being a renowned tournament champion, battlefield veteran, skilled duelist, personal friend to several nobles, and person who has performed numerous heroic deeds for commoners, nobles, knights, the church, and by extension even the king himself, Henry of Skalitz is not a knight. This may not seem too important at the surface level until you understand the extraordinary actions Henry has achieved, and how easy it would be for him to be knighted by any number of people he has come into contact with. If we go through his achievements, which we will in a bit, any number of them would realistically be reason for him to earn his spurs. We have detailed historical evidence for such things happening in real life, and there is no real narrative reason why Henry shouldn't have been knighted long ago. Before I dive into his accomplishments, I'm going to take a few minutes to discuss the historical background of this topic, just so everyone watching this video understands that I'm not making all of this up. By the early 15th century, the maxim, "any knight can make a knight," was broadly recognized across medieval Europe, including in the Kingdom of Bohemia. Scholars such as Maurice Keene note that while royal or princely dubbing conferred special prestige, any established knight in good standing had the legal and ceremonial capacity to dub another man as a knight. This principle was confirmed by contemporary chivalric authorities like Geoffrey de Charny, who alluded to the flexible nature of knighthood ceremonies in the Book of Chivalry from around 1350. Likewise, Jean-François Chroniques from the late 14th century describe numerous instances of battlefield promotions in which newly distinguished warriors were knighted on the spot by fellow knights rather than by a monarch. In Bohemia, circa 1403, King Wenceslaus IV of the Luxembourg dynasty ruled a realm where local magnates held significant power. While it was common for leading nobles or the king himself to knight promising squires during major ceremonies, their involvement was not strictly required by law or custom. Records and chronicles from this period show that, although these high-status figures typically oversaw the ritual to bestow greater honor and political advantage, ordinary knights could still perform knightings, especially in tournaments or on the battlefield. There were documented instances of this happening on the battlefields during the Hussite Wars, for example. Despite this flexibility, being dubbed by a powerful patron offered manifold benefits. A ceremony conducted by a king or influential noble brought heightened visibility, underscored the new knight's status, and strengthened the feudal bonds between liege and vassal. It also provided better access to royal patronage and potential land grants. Nevertheless, as reflected in the broader medieval understanding of chivalry, the formal authority to make someone a knight did not belong to the king alone. In Bohemia, as elsewhere in Europe, the shared consensus was that the power of knighthood resided within knighthood itself, making the ceremony both an individual and communal affirmation of marital and social honor. So, what does all that mean in the context of Henry and Kingdom Come Deliverance's story? Well, simply put, Henry should be a knight. Realistically, a knighthood would have been a far more appropriate award for him for single-handedly saving Hans Cappan's life in the first game from those Cumans that captured him. Instead, he got a horse, and as has been pointed out multiple times within the story of both games, not a particularly good horse. This isn't to say that, for someone of Henry's station, that a horse isn't a good gift, but look at the narrative facts. Henry was acting in the service of his lord, Sir Radzig Kobyla, and was squiring for Hans Cappan at the time. This is military service, and the traditional reward for squires who prove themselves in battle, especially heroically so, receive their knighthood. After this event, Henry then goes on to continue serving his liege lord, and other prominent nobles, including Sir Divish, Lord of Talmberg, and Sir Hanish, the acting Lord of Rethei. He investigates and brings to justice dangerous bands of criminals, infiltrates and sabotages a fortified enemy camp at Pribyslavitz before participating in a pitched battle there, and single-handedly defeating the enemy commander in single combat. He then goes on to investigate and bring to justice an illegal counterfeiting ring, which is a capital offense. He also saves all of the inhabitants of a village from poisoning. He then once again investigates a dangerous band of brigands, infiltrating their ranks, and once again going alone into their stronghold to scout their strength, is then captured, tortured, escapes, and leads an army back to stop them, once again participating in a pitched battle where he defeats multiple armed and armored opponents. Then, Henry participates in the Siege of Talmberg, conducting a stealth infiltration in an attempt to rescue his father, Sir Radzig Kobyla, and Sir Divish's wife, Lady Stephanie. This mission was realistically a suicide mission if it failed, and in the end, he once again personally saves Sir Hans Kapan's life, carrying him to safety and getting him back to the siege camp. Henry then fights in another battle, defeating the reinforcements sent to break the siege. He then participates in the battle, retaking Talmberg Castle, and helping to save his father, Sir Radzig Kobyla, and Lady Stephanie of Talmberg. Aside from this, Henry also has an opportunity in the first game to become the Rattay Tournament champion, defeat another knight who is Captain Bernard's cousin in personal combat, driving another band of bandits from the Rattay fiefdom. He also duels and defeats Sir Hagen Zul, another knight and the enemy of Radzig Kobyla, once again in personal combat. And that is all not accounting for the countless peasants that he personally saves throughout the story. So in the first game alone, there are at least 13 heroic deeds that Henry accomplished that realistically should, or at least could have earned him a knighthood. And none of that is even considering the fact that Henry is, although perhaps not officially, the recognized natural-born son of Sir Radzig Kobyla, the king's hetman and Lord of Silver Skalitz. And keep in mind, Sir Radzig could, at any time, get royal approval from his close personal friend, King Wenceslaus IV, to legitimize Henry, and then he wouldn't even be considered a bastard. So as we established, any knight can make a knight. So in the first game, Henry could have been knighted by at least the following individuals: Sir Robard, Sir Divish, Sir Radzig, Sir Hanush, Sir Hans Kapan, and possibly Captain Bernard, depending if he was actually a knight. It would not be uncommon for a captain of the guards to also be a knight, but if he is a knight, then he would have realistically gone by Sir Bernard and not Captain Bernard, as the knighthood is inherently a higher rank than guard captain. So that brings us to the end of the first game's story, but it gets so much worse when you consider the events of the second game. I'm going to discuss them now in brief, so if you haven't played the second game, you can skip to this point in the video, which I'm showing you on screen, to avoid this discussion and prevent having the second game's story spoiled for you in any way. But now, let's get on to it. In the story for KCD2, Henry and Hans once again find themselves in mortal peril, acting under the command of Sir Hanush and Margrave Jobst to deliver a message to Otto von Burgau at Troski Castle. In doing so, they are ambushed and nearly killed, both narrowly saving each other and acting courageously to get out of that situation. After a bunch of hijinks attempting to get into contact with Sir Otto, Hans Kapan nearly gets himself executed, and Henry once again personally saves his life, and in doing so, also personally saves the life of another knight and Sir Otto's captain of his guard. And Henry and Hans engage in another battle, this time under Sir Otto's banner, and at the end of this battle, Henry once again potentially saves Sir Hans's life and defeats Jan Žižka in personal combat. Henry then participates in another full-scale battle at Nabokov. Later on, Henry once again personally and single-handedly rescues Sir Hans Kapan from captivity, and gets him to safety. He becomes the Kuttenberg Tournament champion, charges into the Battle of Raborsch, potentially saving several knights and nobles, rescues Lady Rosa, Lord Ruthard's daughter, after once again infiltrating and conquering a castle. Later he rescues several captured lords from the Italian court, once again including Lord Ruthard and also Father Godwin's father, the Lord of Raborsch. He then fights during the entire siege of Sukdol Castle, and in the end goes on a potential suicide mission to break through the siege lines and get reinforcements, which he does, charging in with them, saving the day and several knights and lords' lives, including Sir Hans Kapan, Jan Žižka, who is also a knight, Sir Hinnik of Kunstadt, Lord Peter of Pajek, and the remaining garrison of Sukdol Castle. So by the end of the second game story, once again, we have another dozen or so heroic actions that Henry has completed, any one of which is realistically justification for him being knighted. He has personally saved the lives of several high lords, so this isn't a matter of befriending a couple hedge knights. Lord Hans Kapan of Perkstein owes Henry his life a half-dozen times. Lord Peter of Pajek owes Henry his life, as well as that of his family and his castle. Lord Kunzlin Ruthard and his daughter Rosa owe Henry their lives. Sir Radzig Kobyla owes Henry his life, and as we've pointed out, aside from personal life debts, Henry has also faithfully and valiantly served Sir Hanush of Lipa, Margrave Jobst of Moravia, and by extension King Wenceslaus IV of Luxembourg. And at any time, any one of these knights or lords had the ceremonial and legal authority to knight him at any point. And yet, the only person who has ever brought it up, despite not following through, is Sir Otto von Bergau. How is Henry not a knight? And this still might not seem like a big deal to some people, but historically and realistically, it is a huge deal. Henry is constantly placing himself in grave danger, and being a knight isn't just a ceremonial nicety. It makes him more important. This doesn't just change his social class, it also allows him a far more realistic ability to interact with all of these high knights and nobles that he's constantly having to interact with. And if he were captured in battle, it would be far more likely that he would be kept alive for ransom instead of being simply executed, as this was a protection of knighthood. So it also isn't just a matter of the fact that Henry has clearly earned his knighthood, but if the people around him cared about him at all, they would publicly and officially knight him. And there's also no narrative reason why he can't be knighted. Some people may point out the fact that he is the bastard son of Radzig Kobyla. This does not matter at all. Any person, regardless of background, occupation, status, or legal standing, can be made a knight by any knight in good standing. Knighthood was a Christian brotherhood, so the only actual qualification is that Henry is a baptized Christian. But even that is historically not a huge roadblock, because numerous historical examples exist of pagans and heathens being baptized and then knighted at the same time. So, as I hope I've highlighted in this video, there is not a single historical, narrative, or logical reason why Henry, especially by the end of the second game's story, would not be an anointed knight. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.